This week's episode of the Run, Eat, Drink podcast is brought to you by listeners like you. Head on over to patreon.com/runeatdrinkpodcast and subscribe today. Fans, founders, and insiders like you help us keep the Run, Eat, Drink podcast going, and we thank you for your support.
I'm Bart Yasso, and you're listening to the Run, Eat, Drink podcast.
Welcome to the Run, Eat, Drink podcast. We feature destination races from across the country. And after the race, we take you on a tour of the best local food and beverage to celebrate. So whether you are an elite runner or a back of the packer like us, you'll know the best places to accomplish, explore, and indulge on your next runcation. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 155 of the Run, Eat, Drink podcast. I'm your host, Amy.
And I'm, of course, your co-host, Dana.
This is also a very exciting episode for me. We have a running interview that, of course, clearly, if you listened to last week, I am so jazzed to bring to you.
You might have gotten the clue last week for that, but I'm also excited for this week's episode because...
I didn't say we. I'm sorry.
The two Floridians here who are podcasts are going to be talking about some great cold weather food and drink for you guys.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
So we are definitely outside of our lane. We did not stay in our lane this week.
Well, it's warmer here right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's humid here right now. But a lot of our listeners are still combating the cold temperatures of winter, even as we head into March.
This is true. We were actually talking about, we've been trying to offer some food and drink options for everybody to continue to put arrows in their fitness quiver for 2021. Yeah. And we were commenting the other day in conversation where we focus on things that are a little lighter, a little more like lighter fare, like soups, and we haven't gotten into like super hearty things other than the chili.
Yeah, the chili was really
Chili's
good.
very hearty.
Very hearty.
But we said we're the exception to the rule. Like the rest of the country, especially our friends out west, are enduring some pretty chilly temperatures.
I do not envy them. I hope the best for them.
But we thought the two people from Florida ought to talk to you guys about cold weather food.
We ought to bring them some things that they can utilize.
Yeah, some great
and enjoy
food and drink options that will not only warm the body and the soul, but also can be more healthful.
Yes.
So we have a couple of options. We're diving into some cooking this week as opposed to destination dining.
Of course.
This week.
Yes. Because we are still, a few of our Runcation Nation have been able to attend live races.
Yes.
Yeah.
We actually got to celebrate that a little bit this weekend.
Yeah. Jennifer Fink did a 5K that was hosted by a local high school where she is. And Jessica, Harley Running Gal,
yes,
on Instagram, if you know her, Orange Blossom Half, I think
which I never heard of.
She coached one of her friends or supported her right through her first half marathon, and one of her other friends, a couple of her other friends, actually got age group awards, which were incredible.
That's awesome.
So
cool medal. I think we shared some photos of that in our social media feed, and getting to see people doing a live race actually had me suffering from some FOMO.
Oh, fantastic for them though.
Although
big applause.
Did you notice in the photos that were taken early in the race, that was a lot of fog on the course.
Very humid at the Orange Blossom. I don't know. Jennifer Fink didn't really share the weather conditions. She just said it was a great local race. And I think that as people are hosting races for the first time or finding their footing again in hosting live races, there are going to be some challenges.
Oh, sure.
And I just think it still feels good no matter what. And you create some memories that you can always hearken back to.
Oh, absolutely.
I think some of the best laid plans that go awry, I think that you just look back so fondly on those memories with family and friends and fellow runners that you've never even met before. And just, you can celebrate those and they can pull you through some tough runs.
Could not agree more.
Yeah. So applause to the Runcation Nation. And we have an awesome interview, or actually part 2 of an interview to share with you that will fill you with inspiration, because I think one of the very first questions we ask Bart Yasso.
That's right. If you didn't catch it last week,
Bart Yasso.
We got Bart Yasso on the show, and this is part 2 of a 3-part interview with the mayor of running, the former chief running officer of Runner's World magazine, world traveler, a man who's done a marathon on all 7 continents. And we had him.
Like the biggest, baddest ultra ever,
Ooh.
Like from last week. But what I like about this week is he talks inspiration.
Yes.
Inspiration from all different kinds of runners and people that he's met in his travels. Without further ado, let us bring to you the running segment of our show and part 2 with running icon Bart Yasso.
The sport really has taken off, and it's gotten so much more inclusive, and it's really been a real joy to physically witness that.
That's due in no small part to a lot of the work that you've done over the years in growing the community and promoting running. And you are an inspiration and a hero to so many people. I'd like to know, from your perspective, who are some of your running heroes?
Yeah,
I get that question, and I'm friends with some of the greatest runners ever. I can text them right now and say, what's up, kind of thing. But it's really, to me, the inspirational stories really make it, and people that overcome a lot of odds just to get to a starting line. Those are people that really stick with me. And I always say the running community really inspires me, the running community as a whole, because going to all the races I went to and all the years at Runner's World, I witnessed so many amazing people finish races that just had the odds against them to even get to the starting line, let alone the finish line. And to see the running community rally around them and inspire and to really encourage them, it is pretty cool to see. It is, I'll be honest, it is fun knowing some of the fastest runners in the world that go on to win the big races you go to. It really is fun. But I can tell you, people that you never suspect that follow you or inspired by you, and you would never know it because they're quiet people. And but I'm inspired by it's people just willing to go out there and be part of the sport, inspire others. And the running community as a whole is pretty inspiring. And,
like just talking about the Anchorage Run Fest and meeting Marco Cisetto.
Oh my God. Cisetto, that guy is so hard. He is so hardcore and tough. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
A guy that, was a great runner and then lost the lower part of both of his legs. And he could have easily just gone down the wrong path, gone into a depression, gone into drugs or alcohol. Really just said, okay, I'm done. He could have felt sorry for himself, but he kind of got himself together and said, you know what? I'm going to get these prosthetic limbs and I'm going to be a runner. And dude, that guy is unbelievable.
He is.
I think at Anchorage, he did the half. I think he ran 1:18 for a half marathon on 2 prosthetic limbs. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. When you think of Marco, all you think of is that smile.
Yes.
He's got the classic. I've done races in Kenya and, spent a fair amount of time in East Africa. And the Kenyans, they all have this beautiful smile. Marco is like quintessential Kenyan big smile. Do you see those big teeth, that big smile?
Yeah.
And, he's a very inspiring person and just a joy to be around. And, when you see that kind of stuff, it really just takes you to a whole new level.
It does.
When I talked about when I retired, I was doing all these interviews. And one of the questions I got a lot, like they said, okay, what's your mark going to be on the running community when you step away? And, everyone thought it was going to be, oh, you won this race or you did that. I said, no, it has what I really want runners to know. And I remind the runners every time I'm around people and groups or wherever is how inspiring that they are and how they inspire people they may never know and may never meet and never know they inspire people. So be out there, just be aware of that when you're out there. Somebody's watching you, a neighbor, someone you work with, you just have no idea. And I found that out. I was easy to track down because you pick up Runner's World magazine and my name's right at the top of the masthead and there's my email address and my phone numbers at work. So people were able to track me down a little bit easier than your typical runner. And I would get these emails and stuff from people and just how I inspire them. And I was just blown away because I just wasn't what I anticipated would happen to me. And it's when they would tell me their story was inspiring. And it was just things like, I always tell people, I got this email one time from this mom, and it was her son that was talking to her. And this kid wanted to be Bart Yasso, and he's an autistic kid, really non-communicative, socially awkward. No one liked him at school, all this stuff. And Mom said, I would try to talk to him at night, say, what's going on in that head of yours? What are you thinking? And then she'd get a pen and paper out and he wouldn't say anything. And then she said, one night I'd tell him, what's going on? And he started talking, she's writing it down, and he said he wanted to be Bart Yasso. And he said, everybody likes that guy. She would come to a race that I was at, and he would come to my talk, and she would be with her son. And he liked that, how everyone would come up and talk to me afterwards, because that's what he wanted, because he'd go to school and no one would talk to him and they'd be mean to him. And I'm reading this email just about, I had to get up and close my office door because I was in there crying, thinking, putting myself in this kid's shoes and how hard it was. And he said, Bart Yasso does this and this, and I just wish I could be Bart Yasso for one day, and I wish he was my age, and all this kind of Bart Yasso stuff. And I was really torn apart. And then the very end of the email, really, tears run down my face, but I got to laugh because he said, yeah, I want to be Bart Yasso, but I don't want to do all that running crap. Oh my God, what a way to end it. It was such a cool email. But so I inspired this kid without ever knowing who this kid is, or he would just be with his mom. But then I did go do a 10-kilometer race in their hometown and, ran with the mom and her son. So it was pretty cool.
So he did do some of that running crap.
He did do some of the running crap.
Oh, yeah, he did run a little bit, but he didn't want to do like pad water and that kind of stuff. That's by running crap. I'm like, you couldn't script something like that. And if this woman would have never reached out to me, I would never have known that. So that I always use that as an example. And I know I got an Instagram message recently. I used to go speak to this school close, it was maybe 10 miles from the Runner's World office. And it was in a poor school in the rough part of town. And that's why I always went to that one school and talked to the kids about, running may just give you that inspiration that you can go on and do something else. I'm not saying you have to be a great runner, but running really teaches you, how to set goals and attain these goals, and it's going to help you out in school. So I used to go there and talk to these kids, and then one day I got a message, and it was the principal of the school. And he said, you used to come and talk to my kids. And he said, I was that big, heavy guy in the background. He goes, and I never thought I would run. And he said, one day I thought I got to make a change because my doctors told me, like, you're overweight and you really should start making a change now. And he took up running. He said, that Bart Yasso guy seemed like running was so fun. And when he sent me this message, he said, I'm heading off to do my first marathon. And I was like, I would assume he was there every time I arrived at the school, but, and I'm sure at some point he greeted me. But he just used to hang out in the background, not with the kids. Like he would be back here and he would see me interact with these kids. And, 3 years later, he got inspired from what I was telling those kids. So just never know. We always have to keep that in mind. Like, never say, oh, that was the worst run I've ever had. I feel terrible. You just got to, you have bad days. You just say, hey, didn't have my greatest run, but I'm happy to be out there. Because, someone could be listening, and you could be inspiring that person. So I always tell runners, that was my message to runners. Keep on inspiring and be aware of how you inspire people.
Have you ever been in a race and been at a tough or a low point and thinking, I gotta quit?
Yeah.
What turned it around for you? Is there a particular thing?
Yeah. I mean, I did drop out of a couple of races because I was sick and didn't realize it at the time. But I thought, I can do this and I'm tough. I can do this. And that was really a mistake to do because I ended up in the hospital. But it's just a regular race where it's so easy to talk yourself out of saying, okay, when I'm out here and just not having a good day, I'm killing myself for no reason at all. I should just quit. But that's the worst thing to do. You really just got to keep going, because sometimes those tough races are the ones you really remember. Mm-hmm. And then when you do have that really good day, it's really going to help you that you remember, okay, I didn't quit that day when everything went wrong. And, now I'm feeling like I got wings on my shoes. I'm going to take off and have the greatest race of my life. So that's why I always tell people, you got to, unless it is something where you're really sick or something, that's a smart thing to stop. But it's all in your head. You got to tell yourself it's worth it to finish and just
it's a mental game.
It really is. And it's so easy to talk yourself out of it, especially the longer the race is, because you got just time to just go, you know what, I can drop out here, go jump in a pool at the hotel.
Yeah.
But it really does pay to get to that finish line, and you will have better days.
It changes you, I think.
Yes.
When it's not about sickness or not about injury that could make you worse, I really think if you can take hold of the mental attitude and make it to the finish line, it does change you and it changes your life. I
totally agree, Amy. And especially if it's a real long race where you're only at mile 10 of a 50-mile race and you're going, man, I don't feel well, but you just keep going.
146.
Really I mean, I could have stopped many times in that race, but there was never a chance. I mean, once I told myself at the start of that 146-mile race to enjoy it and to really think of all the miles you've run to get here and the opportunity you have. And that's what I thought the whole way.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I got to the 100 miles, and I was like, oh my God, there's only 46 miles to go. This is so easy.
There's only.
Yeah. Oh. I had that mindset. I run 23 to 25 miles a week now. So I can't, 46 miles now would feel like a long way. But then I just had that back of my head, felt strong at 100 miles, only 46 to go. I'm going for it. A little bit different these days, but you have to you really teach yourself not to give up, to really get those bad demons out of your head and think good stuff and, be happy you can do this and just keep going.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's something that you get better at with practice?
Yes. Yeah. And just, you're going to realize the more you do races, you're going to realize some days you just don't have it. I don't know what it is, but some days you just go out there, and I always kid around. I would say some days you feel like you got wings on your shoes and it's just effortless to run, and you can just get faster as you go along. And then there's some days I always think like, my God, my running buddies put like Velcro on the bottom of my shoes or something. I feel like I'm sticking to the road and I just can't push it off. What is going on here? And that's a thing that always comes in my mind. I know my running buddies, they did something to my shoes last night that I don't know about. But it just, the way it is. I remember the first marathon I did in East Africa, the Mount Kilimanjaro Marathon. It was a 2-loop course. And man, I just had one of those days. And there were so many fast runners in this race. Everyone was East African, either Tanzanian, Kenyan, or Ethiopian. And they shoot the gun off, and there were maybe 3 of us not running faster than 6-minute miles. And I was right at 6-minute mile pace. And I just remember thinking, okay, I still got to run my own race. But I had one of those days that, man, it just was effortless to run. And I just got faster and faster as the race went on. Came to Rabway and then really picked it up on that second half and came in. I was so excited to finish that race. And they dismantled the whole finish line area about 2 hours and 20 minutes into the marathon. There was no half. There was only a marathon. And the winners came in and they didn't even care about the first woman. They didn't even, whatever top 10 runners come in and they just turned the clock off and folded up the chute and stuff that they had. And when I came in, I thought I was in the wrong place, but I knew I followed the course. And I was like, to finish, but halfway there was all this banner I went under and all this fanfare, and then came around and I'm like, what the heck? And then I realized I was in the right spot. And they were like, I said to the racetrack, like, where's the finish line? It's in the trunk of my car.
It's in the trunk of my car.
He looked at his watch and he's like, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. What were you doing out there that long? And I'm like, man, dude, I ran as hard as I could run. And I was good out there. It's just so different the way East Africans think of a race, the way we think of a race. Wow. And that was early 90s. The race has changed a lot. They really now stick around for people and they do a half marathon and marathon.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, but there was no half. There were very few races that had a half and a marathon in the old days. Very few.
Now it's more common.
Now it's very common.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a great thing because it just opens up the door for more people to do it.
That is true. And I think that I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Yasso 800s.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I think it would be a crime if I didn't actually ask you, okay, so there's a lot out there. Like when you Google, when you do any kind of search engine, you get hundreds of videos, you get all of this. So can you talk a little bit about that method?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing I always tell runners is don't have a workout named after you. That's number one. Because you get beat up on the internet every day. It's so funny. People always send me these threads and they always say, oh my God, you got to get on this thread. They're bashing Yasso 800s. And I go, I don't have to get on any thread. I've only ever said the workout works for me. I never said it worked for anyone else.
Yeah.
But Amby was the one who named them after me. Amby Burfoot, editor at Runner's World for many years, gentleman who won the Boston Marathon in 1968, a prolific writer, a great person. I still keep in touch with Amby. He's a really great guy. But I was at the race with him. We were rooming together. And I said, I'm going to have to do this workout 10 times 800 so I can figure out what shape I'm in to run this marathon. And, told him how 10 800s, if I average 240, I'll run a 240 marathon. And he thought I was crazy. So I did the workout and then 2 weeks later did the marathon and was exact. And he was blown away. And he said, oh my God, we got to get this in Runner's World. I said, but Amby, I only said it works for me. I used to run 3 miles as a warm up and then do a bunch of strides and then run 10 times 800 with a 400 recovery and then another 3 mile cool down. So it's a good workout, a lot of miles. But you average the 800 meters in the time you want to run in the marathon. Of course, the 800 meters are in minutes and seconds versus the marathon time in hours and minutes. But you want to run a 4-hour marathon, you run 4-minute 800s. And Amby thought it would be genius and he thought is the greatest. So he starts this story in Runner's World, and he's talking to me, and then he named them after me without me knowing it.
Oh, he didn't include you on that creative decision.
No, not that part of it. But he said because I had an unusual last name, if I was Bart Smith, he would have never called him Smith 800s. He said, you got an unusual last name that's really going to stick. And and this is 1993.
He's not wrong.
No.
Yeah, and and I said, okay, this will be in the magazine. People will do the workout. Someone will, yell at me at a race. It didn't work for them, and then they'll never hear about it again. That's what I said in 1993.
And then the commercially available internet came along.
That's right. The internet came along, and then I said, oh my God, there's not a day in my life that someone doesn't email me or message me or somehow get a hold of me about Yasso 800. So it is really fun. But it does work for a lot of people. And some people it's their first experience in track workout, so they get on the track and they like it. And obviously going to the track and running faster is going to get you faster. I don't think the Yasso 800s are any great point. It's not based on science. It really is just this correlation that's kind of just happened. And,
from experience, from you looking back at your training log and seeing.
And it really did correlate with my training. And, I just messaged someone on Instagram last night because it came up, the hashtag showed up the Yasso 800s, and this guy did 2 800s, and he said, wow, this says I can run a 4-hour marathon. He did 2 800s averaging 4 minutes. And he said, I don't think I'm ready for a 4-hour marathon. And I told him, I said, what, you got to do 10 times 800, not 2 times 800. If I was, you can run a lot faster if you're only doing 2 800s than doing 10. So he couldn't believe that I got through to him and, commented on this, it was really fun.
Oh, I think.
But it's just one of the fun things in running. It really is. I always kid people, don't have a workout named after you, because I was in a coffee shop working on my laptop, and this woman comes in and she recognized me, and she said, are you Bart Yasso? And I said, yeah. And she said really loudly in this coffee shop, I curse your name every Wednesday night.
Must be training night.
Yeah. And when you say that around runners, they think it's funny. But in a coffee shop where they don't know how I know this woman or what I do to make
what happened
first, the whole coffee shop got quiet. And then I thought, she was going to sit down, talk to me or whatever. She went and got her coffee. And everyone's looking at me in this coffee shop like, wow, this dude's so mean, makes this girl curse over Wednesday. So
what did he do?
She got her coffee and then came back. And then we sat down and had this nice conversation. And then everyone realized whatever I did to this woman was not a bad thing, because she was talking and we had a great conversation. It was really funny. But those are the things that it's just crazy. I was laughing so hard when I realized why the coffee shop, you could hear a pin drop after that woman. Oh, she said so loudly that everyone heard. My God, I curse your name every Wednesday. It's too funny.
A follow-up on the Yasso 800.
Okay. Is
it scalable to the half marathon? And do you think that's realistic for a first-timer?
Yes. I mean, I find that the Yasso 800s work for a marathoner that has a couple marathons under their belt, because then they really learn how to run the race, the distance.
Okay.
And then it really, so when I was doing the workout and doing the stuff, I was running 90 to 100 miles a week, because that's what everyone did back then. If you were a marathoner, you ran 100 miles a week. It was just the way it was. You don't need to run that much, but I didn't know that back in the early 80s and when I started doing all this stuff. But it's just, the way it was. So I find that the Yasso 800s really work for someone that does somewhat higher mileage and is used to going on the track and has a couple marathons under their belt.
Okay.
Transition into the half marathon. So when the half marathon became popular, because they weren't common back when I started racing. There were only 2 the one in Indianapolis started in the 70s, and also the one in Philly. But they were so old they didn't call them half marathons. They called it the Philly Distance Run, and the one in Indianapolis called it the Mini Marathon.
Oh, yeah.
So eventually this term came along, half marathon, and they're like, whoa, okay. And then, it just took off. But so when I started doing some half marathons, I figured out I did 20 times 400 with a 200 recovery, and it was exact. I ended up running, I remember it, I did, my favorite half marathon, there was this local half marathon. I went out and did the 2,400s, I averaged 112. I do the race, I ran 112. Wow. I mean, to the exact. But again, that, 2,400s was it's a workout. And
do you do all of those, and then the recovery comes after the drills?
Yeah. So I did a 3-mile warm up, and then strides and all kinds of craziness, and then 400 meters, and then 200-meter jog, 400 meters to him, and you got to do 20.
Alternate, yeah, okay.
So lucky we had those fancy Casio watch that had the 20 split, so it knew. Because I remember doing it the first couple times I did it, I would put little pebbles and then just throw one away every time, so you count it down, because I never wanted to think like, okay, I got
how many?
There was 11, and then you go, was that 11, or do I have 11 to go, or And I always thought, put those little pebbles there. When I'm out there running, my buddy's going to put some more back there. You're going to end up doing like 30 of them.
Oh, my Lord.
So, luckily, those watches ended up going. We could get 20 splits on them. That was a big deal back then. And you think of the technology today.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
We were bare bones.
Yeah.
A little bit of the running clothes. Nothing was fancy. No fancy colors. And running shoes, you knew every running shoe made. You knew every brand and every model, because there were maybe 15 different models of shoes. So you knew everything.
Sure.
Now there's so many brands and different shoes. I can't keep up. I know all the brands. I don't know all the different shoes that each brand has anymore.
What they do. And we always, we needed help when we started to run, and we were lucky to have it here locally in town.
Yeah. All the mistakes you could make in picking your first running shoe.
We made them.
We did them all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty common. And that's one. But the running stores, we're lucky. The running stores really help you out. They have experienced people, and they get you in the right shoe for you, because most people start out and they say, I want the best running shoe. I'm really serious about this running. And it's really, there is no such thing. There's a shoe that fits you based on what you run, how the style you run, whether you supinate or pronate, either your foot turns in or outward, or and the running store will know this stuff. They got the pros there, and it's so helpful. So I always tell people, just get to the running store to get fitted for your shoes. But the workout does work for half marathons if you want to do 20 times 400.
So it's good to know, because I haven't really, we haven't tackled the marathon distance. We were supposed to run our first at Walt Disney World this year. Right. And then it went virtual, Yep. So we didn't go. We opted not to, because we want that experience in person. Yep. And I think that a lot of runners are feeling that way, and feeling like that, missing that community, like you talk about so much. You
this race has gone virtual? It's been hard on people.
Have you found ways to deal with that, and what kind of advice have you given runners during this period? People always used to ask me, do I have a mantra or anything? And I used to say, I really don't have a mantra, but I always, when I got to the start of a race, I always said this to myself. I always reminded myself that you're pretty lucky to do this. You're going to run free through these roads. As I traveled around the world, I saw a lot of people that were suppressed, and peak town, they wouldn't even have the infrastructure to close a course down that people could run. So I always thought, man, we got it made. We're going to just get to run free, and we have this freedom. And then I always reminded myself, don't ever take it for granted
how lucky we are to run, because not everyone has that opportunity. There are people that can't run, and we're lucky that we can do it. So I always reminded myself of that. And
focusing on
and then when this virtual stuff started happening, people, I was getting messages from people all over the world, because when it really hit hard in Italy, I did a lot of interviews and runners from Spain and Italy when it first hit, before it got really bad here. They were asking me what to do, because there were a lot of areas they weren't allowed to leave their home.
Right.
Now they're stuck in their house and they didn't know what to do. And, it was just one of those things. I always tried to remind people that how lucky we are to do this. And then we really lost those freedoms for a while. That couldn't run free, especially in the European countries, where it was, you get fined if you left your house.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And you could get thrown in jail. It was that serious, the way they locked things down in northern Italy and a couple areas of Spain. So
those are areas where they have so many multi-generational households.
Yes.
They're culturally a good bit different than we have here in the U.S.
When they didn't know what was happening with the virus, I've spent a lot of time in Italy, and people you go to a coffee shop and everyone kisses everyone. And then you see the person for lunch and you kiss them again, him or her, and it's just what they do. So you can imagine how it spread in Italy.
Yeah, yeah.
And they didn't know they were spreading it.
It's tough because you just didn't know. Yeah.
But I encourage people to do the virtual races, because it was really helping out races, because a lot of races are going to never happen again because they couldn't survive. They just didn't have the infrastructure to keep it going. So the races that did survive this are the ones that were able to pull off a virtual race and create some income for their employees. And so it's our community got hit pretty hard. The running community really got hit hard. But virtual, when we go back to whatever the new normal is going to be at races, I think there's going to be some changes that to us eventually will just be normal. Yeah. But feel different when races start back up. Hopefully we can just get back there and back to the old days. But I think the virtual races are going to stick around for quite a while, because I think even races that go back to whatever the new normal is, they're going to offer a virtual part of it. Because
why wouldn't you? Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are going to be afraid to be in big crowds, even after the vaccine is out, and there's just going to be people that they're just not going to feel comfortable.
Right. They
doing the virtual, they'll get the shirt, they'll get the medal, they'll go do it in their, backyard. And I worked with a lot of races. I actually did some race announcing for virtual races. So people,
you did?
Yeah. The race would load up my stuff on their website, and then you fire up your phone, and then you hear me send you off at the start, and then 10 minutes into the race, I'm talking to you. You're getting in your groove, keep it going, and then I would call you in.
Oh, that's great.
It was really fun to do. Yeah. I was doing these voiceovers for a lot of races, and I just tell people, just do what you can. If you can do these virtual races, get out and do them, because it's better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the last several months, our podcast, because we normally travel to destination races, we've pivoted to featuring a lot of virtuals that are helping charities, and they have something tied to it. And there are a lot of people that were kind of on the fence about virtuals, but I think that it gives you that external motivator that maybe just going out and running on your own wouldn't give you, and you can do some good while you're getting out and still training and still keeping moving.
I ended up doing a lot of virtual races, because races kept reaching out to me, and one of the first ones I did was the Kauai Marathon in Hawaii, which I always go to. I host that every year, and it wasn't going to happen, so did a virtual. Ann and I always, go to Hawaii. So I thought, okay, we're going to do this loop, and then we'll both do the half marathon. And then, and Ann my girlfriend Ann is faster than me, so she finished, and I'm out there struggling, and I like come in, and I'm like, you're running alone the whole time. But when I got to where I was going to finish, Ann was there to greet me. She had my medal. She had some fluids for me, and I thought, wow, this is the coolest thing ever, because the person I love the most is really greeting me at the finish. So it meant so much. And I thought it paid off to be the slowest one in the family, because, when Ann finished, there was nobody there. And she had all this stuff set up for me when I came in. It was really cool. So the virtual, you can have fun doing the virtual races. Stuff to do that you can't do in a regular race.
Yeah.
Ask your neighbor to be the race starter, and some kids to be the finish line announcer when you come in. Crazy stuff in your neighborhood. And people do it because, everyone's hunkered down and can't go anywhere. Do a race where there is a connection, some charity that you really would love to support. That way it gives you the incentive to do it and have fun doing it. It's pretty cool.
What I love about this interview, this portion of our interview, is just the inspiration that comes from unknown places.
Yeah.
And Bart talks about that. Yeah, he talks about, I've been to this school, and I've talked to these students, and this principal was there, and I didn't even know that. You never know who you're going to inspire. No,
you have no idea. And we've actually even been the recipients of that a little bit, where we've had people reach out to us and say that they saw us on a race course, and they were so inspired to see us running together. It was nice to hear him talk about that.
Yeah.
And then to be able to actually know what that feels like a little bit. We're not the mayors of running by any stretch. It's a very small scale version of what he has accomplished.
Like a minuscule part of that.
We put the micro in the microcosm when it comes to that. But I totally understood what he was talking about, and it just felt so good to talk to him about it.
And it was a good reminder. You never know. Any runner, every runner out there, it doesn't matter how slow or how fast you are. It doesn't matter how big or how small you are. It doesn't matter where you are in your running journey. You and what you say and what you do can inspire someone else.
Absolutely.
So I just want to thank Bart for sending that message and drilling it home, especially this week in the segment that we have.
Yeah, and next week we're going to be wrapping up the interview with Bart. I think that everyone's going to love hearing how that conversation ends, and we can't wait to share that with you guys. But we're hoping that you're enjoying this series, and thanks for sticking around through this, and stay tuned for part 3 next week.
Well, I mean, I could listen to him forever.
I know. Me too. And the thing is, he has way more stories than he shared with us just during that time, too. So
his book, My Life on the Run, if anybody needs an audio book for a long run, that is one that will keep you engaged with stories for miles.
Yep.
So we scratched the surface, but check it out. And
link in the show notes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just listening to him talk about running makes me hungry. And we didn't talk at the beginning of the show about what our own personal running for this week has been. You're still hardcore into rehab. I just did some short training runs. But regardless, we've worked up an appetite. We cooked ahead this week in preparation, knowing we were going to be working up an appetite.
We did.
And to do that, what we decided to do was go back to a reference, a resource that we talked about on our show more than a couple of episodes ago. You have heard us talk about this book for a couple of episodes, and in fact,
you got to 3 or 4.
And you've even gotten to enjoy us talking with the authors.
Yes.
Ray Cronise and Julieanna Hever, who's also known as the plant-based dietitian.
We're coming up on the anniversary of those interviews in
I know.
April.
That's crazy.
Episodes 108, 109. Those were amazing conversations we had.
And of course, the book we're talking about is the Healthspan Solution. And this is a reference, kind of an educational and informative book that talks about healthy plant-based eating and gives you over 100 recipes to cook from.
And they're so versatile that the potato salad we featured last year, that some of our Runcation Nation made and took photos of and talked about their families truly enjoying. I love that.
Yeah, food that it happens to be plant-based, but there is no attempt to fool you and make you think it's, something other than it is, but so flavorful and so delicious, you don't care. And
like we talked about at the top of the show, our northern friends and even our friends in Texas have really endured some rough weather.
Yes.
This winter.
It's been brutal for really everybody but Florida. We've just decided we're not doing winter this year.
Which is terrible. We commiserate with you, though. We have been through hurricanes and tornadoes, and so we know what tough weather is like. When we think about warmer weather and what we enjoy, then the antithesis of that is just the harsh snow, the rain, and we wanted to warm your soul with the recipe from the Healthspan Solution this week.
Yeah. Now, this happens to be a dish that is near and dear to our hearts. We have had this in numerous restaurants across the country. I grew up eating it.
Yes.
And I am a huge fan, and Amy is too, of shepherd's pie.
We've had it at Raglan Road, although I don't think we've ever broken down and reviewed that dish on any episode. We have talked about a lot of different recipes and dishes that they have there at Raglan Road in Disney Springs, in Orlando, on the Disney property.
Oh, yeah. Whether it's the shepherd's pie at Raglan Road and
Bangers and Mash. We haven't actually reviewed the shepherd's pie proper on the show.
No, but they've got an amazing one there. Of course, there's one of my favorites growing up or living in Atlanta during college and post-college at the Limerick Junction in Virginia Highlands.
And we passed that on the Jeff Galloway half marathon course.
Yes.
Which is incredible. I love that.
I believe that the pub in Naples serves a shepherd's pie as well. There's a couple of others that we've had over the years.
You get it. We've seen members of the Runcation Nation post it lately, too, which I think kept that top of mind for me.
Yes.
So the shepherd's pie in the Healthspan Solution, they really call the shepherdess pie.
Yeah, interesting naming convention that they went with, but it is basically a version of shepherd's pie sans the meat. And this gives you an amazingly hearty dish that substitutes, instead of the ground beef and in some recipes ground lamb combination with the beef.
Actually,
this substitutes instead a mixture of black beans, brown or green lentils, and shiitake mushrooms.
Yeah, I think that is what gives it its base, its meaty hardiness without the meat.
Yeah.
In this particular recipe.
But then it goes a step further, and of course, all the traditional vegetables are there as well. You, of course, have your peas and carrots, because you have to have peas and carrots in a shepherd's pie.
You do.
You've got your onion, and it is creating a thickened, rich broth, or almost a gravy, for the vegetable, or for the quote-unquote meat of the dish, using a mixture of cornstarch and red wine.
And you choose the red wine that speaks to you, and it's not really all that much red wine, so it's still a healthful dish.
And remember, when you're cooking that alcohol out.
Yeah.
This is really using the red wine is to give it a depth of flavor and I don't want to say a meatiness. That's not really correct.
A hardiness.
A hardiness, yeah.
A warming your soul kind of dish is what it does with all of the hearty vegetables and that red wine. It just gives it that long stewed, long cooked flavor.
Exactly.
So
you're doing that instead of using like a beef broth or stock.
Mm-hmm. And the recipe is in that book, The Healthspan Solution.
Oh, but we almost skipped over the best part.
What? The mashed potatoes.
Uh-huh.
I just want everybody to know, while we're gushing over this recipe, that you can get it, even though we're not going step by step.
No.
You can get it in the Healthspan Solution, and we link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, we've got an affiliate link in the show notes.
Yeah.
So if you choose to click on that link, you support the show, and you still get a great savings on that book from Amazon.
It's of no cost. It's no extra cost to click on the links and support us.
Exactly.
And those affiliate links. But I love the potatoes on the top. I am a mashed potato. I'm a meat and potatoes kind of girl. I grew up that way.
This is true.
And the hardiness and the woodiness of rosemary and thyme with those potatoes.
Yeah, I love the fact that you basically are boiling the potatoes with sprigs of rosemary and thyme so that the potatoes are scented with those spices. Or herbs, excuse me.
Oh, it's just so rich. And it just reminds me of comfort food.
Yeah, and aside from the fact that you're replacing the filling with a vegetable-based filling, you prepare this exactly like you would a regular shepherd's pie. So once you've created that amazing filling with the mushrooms and the lentils and the beans and the peas and carrots and all that,
so good.
And you've got you've cooked it all down and you've got that great quote unquote gravy going. You're then topping it with these fresh mashed potatoes and then baking them till those potatoes have that nice golden crust on top.
It's so good. Yeah. And the portions, you can portion it out however you want, but we portioned it into 8 humongous servings.
We made a little bit more than what the recipe called for. I think the recipe makes out 6 servings.
Does it?
I think so, but it was a lot of food. And the portions are we're making the basic portion size very hearty. This is stick to your ribs kind of food.
It is. And it's just great. And we hope that you'll try it. I think the way it comes together is just building layers of flavor and creating that comfort winter dish. And I know that we're into March now, but I know that some of our northern friends still have that harsh winter weather they're combating.
Yes.
And so this is just another tool in your toolkit to combat those as you come out and head into the spring.
Absolutely. And I would also like to say that if you are wanting to make this dish, this is a great base recipe for a shepherd's pie.
Oh, yeah.
So then if you were to decide, okay, I've done it meatless this go round, maybe next time, instead of doing the mushroom filling, maybe I just want to use my favorite meatless crumble.
Oh, sure.
So if you want to use something like, say, the Gardein brand meatless crumbles, that's one that we like. Not a sponsor of the show.
No.
We just really like that one for its flavor and texture.
And it's locally available to us.
And most large grocery chains now have
which is
it.
Great.
Or if you find maybe the Impossible, or what's the other one?
Morningstar Farms.
Morningstar Farms has
Those are
some,
a few.
So there's a lot of those textured, or what do they call it? Textured vegetable protein meat crumbles that are available. You could also do this with your favorite meat. This recipe, once you have got the other part of it dialed in and you're making it, the only thing you need to change up is what's making up the bulk of your filling.
So you can play with it. This is just one that truly keeps it vegetable and doesn't do any of the the proteins,
animal proteins,
the animal proteins or the meatless kind of protein substitutes. But you can certainly play with that once you see what the recipe lays out.
Yeah, and super easy. I think it's about 20 minutes of preparation, and I want to say about 25 minutes of total cook
Actual
time.
Baking and
once you put it all together.
Sauteing and So it's not, and you can certainly, like, for the onion and for the celery and things like that, of course you can get the whole vegetables, or you can get them chopped now in your grocer's produce
I'm so glad you mentioned that. So if you're heading to the grocery store and you are wanting a time-saving meal and you pick up things that are pre-chopped,
bam, bam, bam,
your carrots, onions, celery, boom, you're done. Yeah. Basically, it's just sauteing
it's the saute time with the garlic and
So please check the link out in the show notes for the Healthspan Solution, and you're looking for the shepherdess pie.
Yep.
That is the recipe we are featuring for you guys this week. I believe that Amy took some photos and video of the cooking process.
Yes, it's not in the episode artwork because Bart is.
I guess.
Okay. It's Bart Yasso. So,
but you're going to be sharing that in the social feed?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
So we're not just bragging on this book for any old reason. This is a great recipe we think you guys ought to check out.
Yeah.
But there is a common thread that we're going to talk about, from the food
to the beverage. Here in a moment.
But first, we want to take a minute. We've got some shout outs to do.
We certainly do. We want to say, first and foremost, just before we get to the shout outs, thank you to all of our patrons for the support and growth you've allowed us to achieve in 2020 and heading into 2021.
Yeah, if you've been seeing any of the video feed that we have been adding to and really revamping our recording studio, we have new equipment installed. I have the last of the LED lighting is arriving tomorrow, I think. It's either tomorrow or the day after. And that is due completely from the generosity of our patrons.
It's amazing. And we can't thank you enough. Your contribution helps us continue to bring the Runcation Nation a great show in 2021. And this week, we welcome a couple of new patrons, and we throw out sincere applause for those who have upgraded their patron status.
Yes.
As well.
So you guys have heard us talk about the $2, $5, and $10 levels. That is fans, founders, and insiders. We have 2 new insiders.
We do.
And one who has upgraded from a founder to an insider.
Yes. So Josh Osborne, you will frequently find him dropping into the coffee chats and to our weekly chats on Wednesday to get through Hump Day. And
he's Midnight Wolf 308.
Yes, on Instagram. And we can't thank him enough for his support and his positivity. And he upgraded to become an insider at the highest level of patronage in our patron program.
It's such a awesome surprise to see that email come across. Thank you so much, Josh.
And then we had not 1, but 2 become insiders of the show. Just pledge for the very first time, Joanne Blatchley and Darlene Kaminsky.
And again, I'm
Positively Poly One and the CH Gourmet. I may be butchering the Instagram.
We're not good.
We're not good at this.
User tags or user handles at all.
Yes.
But I'm sitting on the couch and I get the ding and I get the ding and I'm like, hey,
well, you get the ding.
Check this out.
Yeah.
Check your email.
You get the ding because
it is so awesome.
CHF Gourmet is Darlene.
There you go.
Just so I get it right.
We are so thankful for you guys helping us keep this show going and improve. Yes. And it's just amazing. And in spite of this last year's challenges, we've been able to do it because of y'all's support. So if you'll head over to patreon.com/runeatdrinkpodcast. Check out those 3 levels we're talking about. That's the $2, the $5, and $10 level, and each one has their own special perks. And we are continuing to refine and improve those perks as we head through 2021.
Patrons get special thank you messages from us. Insiders and founders get their names in lights on runeatdrink.net, and insiders get a look behind the scenes, get special access to video footage. Like this week, they had early access to part 2 of Bart Yasso's interview. More to come, cooking demos, exclusive tastings of our favorite food and beverage, including bonus items from great places that we didn't necessarily have time for on the show.
Our show is always going to be free, but if you guys want more Run, Eat, Drink podcast content, you want to support the show long term, you want to keep the lights on and the bandwidth flowing, check us out at patreon.com/Run, Eat, Drink podcast.
As always, we thank everyone for every way you have supported and continue to support the Run, Eat, Drink podcast.
Now, I mentioned that there was a thread that was tying together the food and the beverage.
What is that thread?
Well, it happens to be red wine. This might be one of the few, if not the first, times we've covered wine on the show.
Are you shocked, Runcation Nation?
We've been talking about it. We've been teasing it. But we are, in fact, talking about a wine tonight. And we should put an asterisk by that.
Why?
While we are talking about wine, this really is a wine-based beverage.
It's a wine-based beverage that we have talked about. A couple of years ago, we talked about Thanksgiving favorites and beverages that we traditionally have at Thanksgiving, at Christmas. These are family, that we've discovered these recipes. Family members have embraced them, so we have repeatedly brought them to family gatherings. And it's also this mulled wine recipe is a fantastic beverage to have around a fire pit on a cold night in front of the fireplace. We just had a patron go on a ski trip and instruct her friend. Fun Size Jen instructed a friend, taught her how to successfully ski the slopes.
That's impressive.
And I can think of nothing better than to sit down with a warm mug of mulled wine after a successful day like that.
Yeah, a lot of people think of mulled wine as really a traditional holiday or Christmas beverage, but truth be told, it's a phenomenal warm beverage to have as long as the temperatures are dipping low in the evening out there.
Yes.
And it is such an easy one to make. And I was so excited when I came home today. I walked in the door and the smell.
Because I made it. I know.
Immediately.
Your nickname is what? Craft Services?
Craft Services. That's me.
I made the beverage this week. So, yeah.
And the minute I walked in, I was greeted by the smell of these holiday warming spices of cinnamon and nutmeg and clove and some orange and just this warmth. And I'm like, oh, this is so nice.
Yeah.
And I knew what was waiting. And it's what I love about this is you could set it to go in the morning or at lunchtime and it's ready by dinner. And
it doesn't matter what vessel. You can put it on the stove on low. You could put it in a crock pot on low. Mm-hmm. You can put it in an Instant Pot.
Yeah.
On the slow cook method.
And what's I think even better about it is that you can really vary this recipe up a little bit depending on the wine that you choose.
It does depend because there are red wines that are barrel aged like the one we used, but there are drier ones. There are Malbecs out there that are very woodsy and hearty. And then there are sweeter ones, too, that you can experiment with.
Yeah, and what we ended up going with is one that we found.
It's a bourbon barrel-aged Cabernet Sauvignon called Stave and Steel. Yes.
And we found this one how many years ago? 4 or 5?
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, and this is one that's readily available at our local grocery store.
So
they have a wine section.
Yeah, so I'm thinking it would be widely available, although that red wine element you can play with.
Yes.
In the recipe.
Yeah, we like this one because of the oaky notes that you get from the barrel aging. And we find that pairs very nicely with the things that you add to it during the cooking process. And yes, I said cooking process. And like Amy mentioned, you put this either on the stove or slow cooker. Yeah. And you basically are adding the ingredients. And let's talk ingredients a little bit.
So you have a bottle of wine. And it's the 750 milliliter standard bottle of wine. And you have cinnamon sticks, 4 cinnamon sticks, regular size cinnamon sticks. And you have clove, like 8 whole cloves.
And that's because you can filter them out.
Yeah. And also nutmeg. And like whole nutmeg that you break up.
Yeah, a lot of people have never seen whole nutmeg. They don't realize it looks like a kind of like a nut, like a big or an acorn almost.
Yeah.
So like a round nut kind of,
or like a chestnut.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that. But I put them in a plastic bag, and I got a meat mallet, a tenderizer, and broke up a little bit. So I added that. I added the whole cinnamon sticks, and I zested an orange, a large orange, added the zest right into the wine, and then the juice of the orange as well. But I also, the whole orange with the pulp, once you juiced it, was still intact, so I stuck the cloves in there.
Like in the skin?
In the skin, and then dropped in the entirety of the orange with the pulp and the cloves. Now, you can just add the cloves in there, or if you want to get really fancy, you can take cheesecloth and you can put all of the nutmeg and the cinnamon sticks and the cloves, all of that into cheesecloth and tie that up so that it's easily removable that way.
Making a sachet. Or you can add it all in like I did without a cheesecloth because we didn't have one.
And once you have that in there, then low and slow for a couple of hours. But you could let it go as long as you want on low in any vessel. And then you can strain it.
Right.
So you could either do the cheesecloth and then remove the cheesecloth at the end, or you can strain it just in a sieve.
Honestly, I think that you could do the cheesecloth. The problem there is that the cloth's going to absorb some of the liquid.
Sure.
I think you're fine just to pour it through a wire mesh strainer, and you're fine at that point. And then you can put it into you can put it into a serving vessel at that point.
Sure.
You could put it into a thermal carafe of some kind if you're for serving throughout the evening.
Or if you're going to travel with it, you can put it into. We have those really hardy growlers.
The beer growlers that we use.
The beer growlers that you could, like from Florida Keys Brewing.
Yeah, they're manufactured by Drink Tanks, but we got them from Florida Keys.
But you can travel with those. You could put those, and you could then just put them in the trunk of your car if you're going to travel to a celebration or a fire pit or whatever you're going to do.
She keeps dropping the hint of a fire pit. I think I've got to make a trip to the hardware store this weekend.
I'm missing that.
Well, we got probably maybe 2 more days this year where we could enjoy one.
Probably.
Unless we're going to be burning big citronella logs.
Oh, yeah. But so once you strain it, you can strain it into wine glasses, and you can get, in that single bottle of wine, you could probably get 4 servings.
Yeah, that's usually 4 glasses of wine is normally what you get out of a bottle of wine.
And then you can garnish it with a whole cinnamon stick and
orange wheel.
And a lot of mulled wine recipes will have an extra element of brandy.
Oh.
As well. You could play with that. We didn't add any kind of sweetener in this one.
No, this recipe normally calls for equal parts of water and white granulated sugar. So normally it's 1 cup water and 1 cup of granulated sugar. And rather than making a simple syrup, on the stove and then pouring it in. If you're doing it in the slow cooker, you just add those 2 ingredients.
You don't have to.
You don't have to worry
Take the
about
extra
it.
step.
So that does add some volume to the total recipe, and it maybe stretches it a little bit.
Sure.
But it's not really a substantial stretch.
No, I think you're still getting the same
And
number of servings.
it adds a lot of sweetness.
A lot of sweetness. So we did it without this time, so that if you want to stay away from the added sugar and have the drier and less sweet version of the mulled wine, you can.
Or if you have a particular sweetener that you prefer to use as opposed to processed sugar, like we do, we like to use dark agave syrup. And for us, it was just adding a tablespoon of the dark agave syrup to our respective mugs of mulled wine.
Yeah. So you can do that to sweeten it, or you could certainly play with honey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that'd be a great option.
Raw honey or local honey, or maple syrup.
If you're wanting to really lean into the holiday flavors.
You could play with the sweetening element of it. Or you could leave that out if you're trying to stay away from that.
And a lot of people don't like a sweeter wine, even if it's in like a mulled wine, warm serving, toddy kind of configuration.
You could get that same, all the spices and the warming. It's just a little bit drier and not as sweet.
Yeah, and for those that like their wine on the dry side, you're like this.
Perfect. And then you get the elements of the spices, the warming soul kind of beverage.
Yeah, this, you serve it piping hot. You've got the cinnamon stick you can swirl in there. I could even see somebody, if they wanted to almost like dessert this up, maybe a little bit of whipped cream on top if they wanted to.
Sure.
I don't think that would be terrible.
No.
But I just love...
Or maybe some cherry or brandy or both.
The brandy sounds interesting to me. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
But this is... it's a fantastic flavor. What I love about it is you put it in the Instant Pot today.
I did. On the slow cooker setting.
And we got great oranges right now. And the orange juice was a nice touch. That sweetens it a little bit. But when you put the zest in, the oils from the zest give such a fresh, citrusy pop to the aroma on this. But when you are letting it steep with the actual rind of the orange in there, it's not only giving you that fragrant orange, it's giving you a little bit of the bitterness.
Yeah, because a lot of
peel.
people, you associate the white part of
the pith.
The pith as really the bitterness. But I think with the red wine, it is really a nice touch. Now, of course, if you don't like that, you could just zest the orange and juice it, and then just not put the whole orange in there. So you can play with this to give it the kind of flavor you want.
But by the time this is all said and done, this is fall, winter holiday in a cup. This is a mug of just homey, like you said, soul-warming goodness.
Yeah.
So this, along with some of that shepherd's pie, or shepherdess pie, I should say.
Depending on what you do
Depending on
with
how
the
you
recipe.
prepare it.
Yeah.
I think this, for our friends that are experiencing this harsh winter this year, is a winning combination of food and drink, especially if you guys are running in some of this weather that we're seeing. I know that there have been some bone-chilling runs that you guys have been doing, and I could just imagine you're running in sub-30-degree temperatures. Rob Nadeau out there on the trail, and some of the footage pictures he showed of the snow. Jen up in New York.
Oh, and Jen in Oklahoma.
They've been running in these crazy low temperatures. I could just see coming in after that, getting a nice plate or bowl of that shepherd's pie, and then curling up with this to get the chill out of your bones.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. So we will link to the Healthspan Solution recipe for the shepherd's pie. And we have the actual recipe for the mulled wine that we use
in the show
notes.
Oh, you did it.
I did.
Awesome.
So that's going to do it.
Yes.
For this week's show.
Next week, part 3, we put a bow on our interview with the mayor of Running, Bart Yasso.
Amazing.
And we'll talk some more about training and preparation and keeping you guys well armed and equipped for a healthful approach to 2021.
And motivated.
And hopefully
inspired.
That's our goal.
Well, Bart's going to do that because he just does that.
He just does that.
Yes.
He can't help it.
He is amazing. And he doesn't realize it. He's so humble. So stay tuned for that third part of the interview. You're going to love it. And
we got a great review over on Apple Podcasts, and we can't thank you enough for doing this. I'm going to share this with everybody. This says, my new coffee clutch, and this was
That's the title.
This was posted by our friends over at the This Diz Life podcast.
Yes.
And it says, Amy and Dana make it so that you feel you are talking to longtime friends. Their coffee talks and podcasts are so relatable and easily some of my favorite content to consume. While I'm not admittedly a runner, their talks get into cuisine, drinks, and just discussions of life itself. This is the perfect podcast for when you're looking to unwind and enjoy the finer things in life. Thank you, Amy and Dana, for sharing your authentic selves with all of us in the podcasting community. And this is signed, Mark.
So sweet. I think he classes us up.
I know. I
feel so classy.
I feel like we need to live up to this now.
My goodness. Yes. Hopefully we have this week.
Well, Mark, and that is Mark Valentine from the This Diz Life podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And if you guys have a second, if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a quick rating and review, that helps us get discovered and it helps us grow the Runcation Nation.
And we can't thank you enough for that because in 2020 and 2021, we can't believe the amazing people we have met in the running community and the podcasting community. So that's going to do it for this episode.
Thank you guys for joining us on your long run, your commute to work, around the house, or wherever you might be.
I'm your host, Amy.
And I'm your co-host, Dana.
Stay safe, stay well, and we will accomplish, explore, and indulge with you really soon. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Run, Eat, Drink podcast. We're having another great year thanks to your support. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We're at Run, Eat, Drink Podcast. And on Twitter, we're Run, Eat, Drink Pod. You can also give us a call at 941-677-2733 or send us an email at info@runeatdrink.net. Visit our website at runeatdrink.net and click on the subscribe link so you don't miss a minute. Find out how you can support the show at patreon.com/runeatdrinkpodcast. Accomplish, explore, and indulge right along with us. We'll talk to you next time.